Hello and welcome to our presentation on the Lithosere Sherwood forest by Kelvin and Matthew Oliver. Now, what is Sherwood Forest? Well, Sherwood Forest is a wooded area located in Nottinghamshire, England, United Kingdom. It's where many people know Robin Hood to have lived and operated in the Middle Ages. As you can see, Nottinghamshire is quite a big place, and Sherwood Forest is located in Region 7 on the map. It is in the northwest side of England and is an area with a fairly temperate climate that experiences quite a great deal of rainfall, as you will see. The four graphs on the right illustrate the climate of Sherwood Forest. The top graph provides an illustration of the temperatures that Sherwood Forest experiences. As can be seen by the red line, which indicates the average temperature experienced in the forest, the temperature rarely fluctuates much above 20 degrees and rarely drops below 4. Now, this means that the area experiences quite a constant temperature and is not one that experiences radical changes in the climate. It's relatively consistent, much like the rest of the UK. The second diagram down shows the number of rainy days that the area has in any given month. From this we can see a similar trend of consistency where the number of rainy days doesn't go below 8 in a month and doesn't go above 12. This means that the range is only 4 and it has a consistent wetness, if you will. The next diagram down shows the wind speed and average wind speed that the area experiences on an annual basis. This is the factor that fluctuates most violently out of all those illustrated. As can be seen, the average wind speed reaches a low of 39 kilometers an hour in the summer months, but in the winter months can rise as high as 80 kilometers an hour. This is quite a drastic fluctuation and will have an impact on the environment. Finally, the last diagram shows the amount of precipitation that the area experiences. This reflects the number of rainy days that the area experiences and is rather consistent. As you can see by this, it reaches a low in March of 41 millimeters and a high in October of 73. While 32 is quite a large range, the increase and decrease is rather gradual and it remains quite constant for many months of the year. Now, Sherwood Forest is an area that has a rich and vibrant history. It's been around ever since the Ice Age finished some 10,000 years ago. As the Ice Age glaciers receded around 10,000 years ago, as I said, animals and primitive plants like lichens and mosses moved in. These were followed by low-growing shrubs such as heather and then dwarf Arctic willow and birch bushes. Eventually, a mixed pine and birch woodland developed. Human evidence is found in the flint tools of prehistoric hunter-gatherers, which also indicates that there was man here immediately after the Ice Age and the land was occupied by Homo sapiens. Now, the Sherwood oaks appeared as the climate continued to warm throughout the Mesolithic and Neolithic ages. Oak, elm and lime trees began to appear amongst the already established pine and birch woodland. Pollen evidence obtained through archaeological investigation shows us that the oak trees appeared between 7,600 and 7,000 BC. Eventually, the woodland began to mature, which is the third point listed. As the poor quality land was hardly worth settling on, much of the establishing mixed woodland was left to grow and mature. There is little evidence of human activity in this period apart from the burial mound of Haywood oaks. Now, when was the heathland born? Sherwood's characteristic heathlands are believed to be the result of Roman woodland clearances. This more open landscape included grasses and low-growing shrubs like heather. As the forest's south and west edges, place names included feld, e.g. Mansfield, which may indicate open country kept free of trees by grazing, and small temporary areas of cultivation, which would constitute a form of plagioclimax. Now, after the Romans, the forest was again largely depopulated. Soil exhaustion and erosion eventually took their toll on land fertility. Sherwood countryside at this point was probably a mix of oak and birch woodland, punctuated by heathland and heather, gorse and rough grassland, and was a landscape that Robin Hood would have seen. Much of the original woodland eventually disappeared as timber was felled to build new large villages and towns which were cleared for use as common grazing pasture land. Moreover, when the monasteries were dissolved under Henry VIII in 1536, economic growth provided a catalyst for more clearance of land. And finally, extensive pine plantations were established after the Second World War to provide fast-growing stocks of timber. Many plantations are now being managed for a return to mixed conifer and broadleaf woodland, interspersed with characteristic Sherwood heathland. Now, what is a deciduous woodland? A deciduous woodland is a type of biome which exists at a certain latitude that Sherwood Forest finds itself at. It can be characterized by a temperate environment that experiences moderate rainfall and relatively cool temperatures.
First of all, I like to explain what climatic climax vegetation is. It is the vegetation that is thought to evolve in a climate region if the seroprogression is not interrupted by human activity, tectonic processes, or impeded drainage. Now, the different stages of succession which are presented on the rocks are shown as a lithosere. The lithosere is a succession that begins life on exposed rock surfaces. Rocks are not a favorable place for the living organisms, but they do not have water and neither have the ability to absorb rainwater. Thus, they are devoid of nutrients, until a well-adapted organism inhabits it. With reference to Sherwood Forest, pre-primary succession, the sunlight's intensity, measured in units of candela, can increase the surface temperature of bare rock in the cold conditions, thus providing a starting point for the pioneer species to inhabit. It is very difficult for other types of plants to survive in these conditions. The lichen or moss is the first organisms that are able to survive under these extreme conditions. The roots of the pioneer flora, which is the first type of flora to colonize an environment with generally little available water, high pHs and exposed areas, help to break up and weather the surface of the rock and so aid soil formation. As the ground is improved through the process of pedogenesis, which is the creation of immature soil, other plants are able to colonize and change the existing balance of species. Each of the colonization provides better conditions for plant growth than the previous one, so an increasing number of species is found. The addition of organic matter from decaying vegetation aided by the help of detritivores, which are organisms that feed off waste products, to help develop soil and improve its structure and water retention qualities, which is the ability to store water. This allows the growth of taller and more aggressive plants that are more demanding of water, nutrients, and anchorage. Taller plants also provide shelter from the sun and wind, which in turn allow other plants to become more established. In each stage of the plant succession, there are dominant plants. These are the tallest, such as the major oak in this example, and cover the most ground. Over time, sometimes even thousands of years, a period of relative stability is reached, in which the vegetation has reached its climatic climax, which is defined from before. Now we will talk about a plagioclimax community. This is when human interruptions to the succession can produce this community, which is then maintained by management. There are different types of management that result in a plagioclimax community, such as urbanization, deforestation, afforestation, farming, burning and slashing, controlled explosion quarrying, and draining of the wetland areas.
Moving on to the nutrient cycle. Now, before describing what is unique about Sherwood Forest's nutrient cycle, it is perhaps important to understand fully what a nutrient cycle is. Now, Gershmel's nutrient cycle is a model which aims to illustrate how different nutrients flow within a given biome. Now, it illustrates this by using three separate compartments. These include soil, biomass, and litter. The soil compartment consists of minerals that come from weathered rock and humus, which is the decomposed natural matter from plants and animals. The biomass compartment is essentially all living things, be they plant or animal. And finally, the litter compartment is that which is found atop the soil and is composed of material which is still decaying. Moreover, the nutrient cycle model shows how things can be transferred from one compartment to another. This is denoted by the arrows, which are sized proportionately to show how different quantities of nutrients change compartment. Now, Sherwood Forest nutrient cycle is that of a deciduous woodland, and it's characterized by a large biomass section, a slightly smaller soil section, and a particularly small litter section. The pattern is unique when compared to those of a savanna or a tropical rainforest, as the forest cover is neither so dense nor so high as in the rainforest, so there are fewer nutrients stored in the vegetation. However, the autumn leaf fall decays fairly slowly in the lower temperatures found in deciduous woodlands, and so there is a comparatively large store in the litter layer. The nutrients from this layer can then be carried down into the soil by the activity of decomposers such as worms. So the store in the soil is actually quite important, and this can be seen by the huge arrow which goes from litter to soil. Now, food chains in the deciduous woodland. Food chains consist of a variety of trophic levels. Now, trophic levels can begin with the bottom level, which comprises of producers. Now, producers, such as plants, are autotrophs. They derive their energy from the sun's light, which they use in the photosynthesis process in order to produce energy. These are then consumed by primary consumers, such as caterpillars, insects, mice. These primary consumers are then eaten by secondary consumers, such as owls, worms, etc. Any form of carnivorous animal that can eat meat. And eventually, this continues until you have a top predator or tertiary consumer. These eat everything and can usually be found to be the top predator in the environment. The particular and unique forms of species found in Sherwood Forest will be further elaborated upon in the next slide. The diagram on this slide illustrates a food web. Now, a food web is a form of illustration showing how different layers and levels of trophs can interact with one another in a given environment. Now, as you can see, there is an autotroph or plant placed in the middle. This is because all of the energy in the ecosystem stems from here. Now, what in particular is unique to Sherwood Forest with regards to the food web? Well, the woodland is dominated by both native oaks, sessile oak, and pedunculate oak, which occur in great numbers along with other native trees such as silver birch, rowan, holly, and hawthorn. Scattered amongst the bracken-filled glades of the wood are more than 1,000 large oak trees. Now, most of these are known to be over 500 years old, with the veteran oak being the most famous of these trees. Now, these trees, which are all quite unique in and of themselves, are host to a wide variety of wildlife that can only be found in this given area. Hollow trunks and rotting wood provide an excellent environment for many forms of species such as detrivores and other sort of scavengers. Over 1,000 species of beetle and spider can be found in Sherwood Forest, many of which are rare and dependent on these old trees for their survival. Other forms of wildlife can also be found in the forest. For example, in the autumn, a rich community of fungi that comprises of over 200 different species exist on the trees and woodland floor. Moreover, animals also depend on these old trees, animals such as birds like the great spotted woodpecker, tawny owl, and redstart, which are all towards the top of the food chain, and a number of bat species such as the noctule bat. Large tracts of sandy heathland, moreover, provide excellent ground for small insects to operate in. These are all animals that are quite unique to Sherwood Forest and are part of the food chain. Thank you for watching this presentation.